Hello, SEAI and others. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today and welcome to the Women in Energy event. First of all, I'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, Simply Blue Group, for their really generous donation for this. Simply Blue Group are a leading blue economy developers, and they are focused on replacing fossil fuels in the offshore sector, so they're really doing a fantastic job. And a big thank you for all of you for braving it and coming out to an in-person event. I know it's risky these days, so thanks so much. Of course, feel free, we're ventilating the room, but feel free to put your mask on or whatever you're comfortable with. So yeah, we'll kick off. So I just wanted to say that last month I was lucky enough to get away on holidays to Barbados. This is going somewhere, I swear. But I was on holidays. And I was telling my friend Claire about it, and she was saying, I would love to go there, but I can't. And I was like, why? And she said, well, the culture in Barbados isn't gay friendly. And it really took me aback. It is something I have never thought of going on holidays. I never thought, do I need to check there to see, am I going to be at risk if I holiday there? And it really got me thinking about the culture and what an impact it has on us. And sometimes it's difficult for us to see the impacts that culture has on other people and how it can leave things out. There's the culture we grew up in and that we work in and that we live in day to day. And that has a really big impact on how we act and the decisions we make. So if you haven't guessed already, today's topic is all about culture. So we want to discuss how good work practices around diversity and inclusion for women in energy can enable us to succeed in our communities and in our workplace to achieve this energy transition. So we have three fantastic speakers lined up for you today. I have Patricia Kominsky, Consenting and Government Relations Manager at Simply Blue, and she'll be sharing her experience of her work culture in her career. We have Sam Fahy. Sam is the Sustainability Manager at DCU, but Sam is also a lead of SEC, that's a Sustainable Energy Community. So she's going to be giving her experiences on the challenges and opportunities she's faced to try to get that cultural change on the ground and leading that as a woman. And finally, we have Ruth Carter. Ruth is the SIBSI CEO, and Ruth has very kindly stepped into us to do this very last minute. It was supposed to be Margie McCarthy, our director at SEI, but unfortunately Margie has COVID. So big thank you to Ruth for coming in for this. So we really hope you enjoy the event. We really wanted to spark some discussion around the links between energy transition and the importance in the culture in achieving that. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Patricia Kominsky. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Julie. I thought we were going to see some holiday snaps there. That was the camera was set up for, but anyway. No, listen, thanks so much for having me back. For those who don't know me, my name is Patricia Kominsky. I work with Simply Blue Group, but I've only worked there for 6 months. For a lot of my career, I worked in SEAI, so I'm so delighted to be back here, seeing a lot of friends. So delighted to be part of this. Usually I'm the one who, like Julie, would get up and just do the few words and not having to, do the full exposure of my career. So, but I'm also delighted that Simply Blue Group are sponsoring this event. And please eat away. There's so much food there, so please eat away and drink away. But I kind of was delighted when we discussed through the topic for the session. I was really delighted that we decided, or Julie decided, to talk about culture, because for Simply Blue Group, that's something that's really, really important. When I first went into Simply Blue Group, within the first week or two, we had a full-on team meeting. We had about 40 people meet down in Ardmore in County Waterford. And the reason why we met in Ardmore in County Waterford is that's where the chief executive's from, and he was saying, I'm not moving, you're all coming to me. So basically, that whole session was all about looking at the organisation's culture and values. And the organisation is actually really quite a small one. We have 60 people working with us now, but we started from I think Julie and I probably met them when we were both working in the ocean energy side of things. We met them about 8 years ago, and they had 2 people. So they've really grown very, very quickly in that time. And a lot of as part of their growth, they've always looked at, okay, how are we doing things? How can we do things better? So they've put a lot of time and effort into looking at the culture and looking at their values. And the values within Simply Blue Group are up here. They are integrity, courage, passion, diversity, and responsibility. And I think it's great that we're also focusing on diversity today, because that is something that within Simply Blue Group we do want to focus on. Just to talk a little bit about them and the projects. So we do have a number of projects around the world. So there's quite a number in Europe, and we're also looking at development in the States. And then within Ireland, these are the main projects, the UK, these are the main projects that we're focusing on for floating wind. We still have a little project on wave, which is a little bit of a grow for me, because that's where I came from SCAI. And we also have some aquaculture projects. So for me, Simply Blue Group was a really good fit for me and my experience and my expertise. And as a result, while it was a difficult decision to leave SCAI, it was an easy decision to join this company. So, as I said, when I first went into Simply Blue Group, we had this session, and this slide was put up by Val Cummins, who's one of our directors. And I think many of you in the room probably know Val or have heard of her. She's a really inspirational woman working in the offshore sector. And she again, very, very strong on ensuring that we have a strong culture within the organization. And this slide, Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast, was put up. And Val said, look, I came across this. I think this statement is really, really pertinent for us. But she said, I think culture actually devours everything in its path. It doesn't just stop at breakfast. So it's so important that we get our culture right. And as a result, as I said, we worked a lot on our values, but also as part of our projects, which we are in joint venture with other very established, very powerful companies like the likes of Shell, Total, we ensure that our values are transferred over to those projects. And we ensure that the values of our team are absolutely maintained, and that when we make decisions or when we decide on a new project area, we consider those values and we really take them to heart. And for me, when I looked back on my career as part of preparing for this, I think this statement actually makes a lot of sense now. And hindsight's always a very fine thing, but I started my career in BIM. I'm a marine biologist by training, actually. I'm not an engineer, as many are in the sector that I'm in. And for a long time, I worked with BIM and worked with a wonderful team of people, very, very passionate about fisheries, very, very passionate about biodiversity and sustainability. And it was actually a really lovely, lovely place to work. However, what happened about 10 years into my career there is there was a decision to decentralize the organization. And that decision had a huge impact on the organization and its culture. And in the end, the strategy to decentralize actually was not successful because of the way it was dealt with. And I think it was because it wasn't understood what the culture of that organization was and the way it was approached. And it was a real learning point for me where I kind of said, well, God, you need to actually look at what you're trying to do and what you're trying to build and whether or not you're building it in the right way. I moved to SCAI 12 years ago. I moved actually as part of a secondment from BIM into SCAI. And for me, that was a really great opportunity to learn about a whole new sector. I actually didn't move into the ocean energy space. I moved into renewable and energy efficiency. I moved into better energy homes and worked with Magella when I first started. So I had a great mentor in Magella. But also I learned a huge amount around how to, implement a program successfully and how to roll out that program. And again, I think there was a really strong culture and understanding in SAO about what they wanted to do, and working with one of our key partners with FEXCO, there was, again, huge emphasis on how we could do that properly. And I mean, that scheme has been so successful. It's still here today. It's still really, really successful, and it goes from strength to strength. So I think, again, it's how you approach it, how you think about what we're trying to achieve, and again, how you empower the culture around that. So I was also asked to talk about, is this one going forward or backwards? Oh, sorry, backwards. Sorry. So the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is diversity. And I suppose, again, throughout my career, I've worked on a number of initiatives, primarily around women. And I suppose, for me, diversity means a lot of things. Inclusion means a lot of things. There's obviously gender diversity that we need to consider, cultural diversity, diversity around sexual orientation, as Julie's mentioned, diversity around ability, and diversity around age. And I think for us working in this sector, we need to consider all of that diversity, because we need to ensure that it's part of any, it's considered as part of any culture to bring forward the energy transition that we need to bring forward. And I was lucky enough, I suppose, in both BIM and SCAI to work on different initiatives, in particularly around empowering women in those sectors. When I was in BIM, I worked with this lady up here, Margaret, Harrington's her name. She was awarded a Lifetime Achievement a couple of years ago from BIM, and she's a really inspirational woman. She basically was a fisherman's wife, but sadly lost her husband at sea. But they had 3 pelagic fishing vessels, and it's within the fishing sector, if someone is lost at sea, you actually can't declare them as dead or missing, so you can't avail of, say, life assurances or anything like that. So she ended up having to run the business in order to keep her family fed. And she realised that there was no real support for women in the sector, so she set up a group called Manona Mara back in the 60s. And, while it was, I suppose, an informal group, it certainly was very, very powerful around supporting women in the sector, because women in the fishing sector oftentimes are the support to their husbands, who are the fishermen. And certainly she approached us in BIM, and my manager, who was a man at the time, came down to the office, and I was the only woman who was in the office, and he was like, there's a lady on the phone who wants to talk to a woman about, Manona Mara. So I said, yeah, sure. So I was lucky enough to engage with her and set up a Manona Mara more formally, and I suppose, facilitate them meeting the minister and building their case. And when I left BIM, this other lady here, Trudy McIntyre, who's also a fisherman's wife, she took up the position, and she's actually brought it from strength to strength. And I suppose for me, it certainly wasn't my idea, it wasn't something I instigated, but saw a real need for this to support the women in the sector. And as a result, we now see a number of women who are actually advocates for the fishing industry. Trudy herself is now working as a fishery liaison officer between renewable projects and fisheries. So there definitely are some, as a result of starting that conversation, I think it's really important to see the roles and the opportunities that there might be. And then later, when we came into SAI, this discussion struck up again. And it's a funny one, because I'm looking at Magella, I remember a time when sitting in a coffee room with Magella and Joanne Sheehan, and it being a very heated discussion over it, of whether or not we needed to have this conversation. And I think, again, the whole idea of women energy, while it really came from the discussion that Emer Cotter started here in the Energy Show. And again, Emer and Joanne kind of spearheaded it for for about a year or so, but unfortunately left SEI. So I got handed the mantle. And again, wasn't my idea, but was happy to facilitate this because I think it's a really important conversation. So I think it's something that we certainly have really benefited from within SAI from having this group. I'm delighted that the likes of Julie and Ruth and Maeve and others still maintain this group and keep this conversation going. And I think, from my perspective, it's part of the diversity equation. It's not one in itself, but it's a really, really important part. And in order for us to basically bring along our society in this energy transition piece, we really need to keep this conversation going, because we are a significant part of the population. We are, we bring significant expertise and insights in this area. And I think it's been a really empowering and useful conversation. So I'm so delighted to be here. So I think that's my points mainly made. Julie, I don't know if there's any questions, or we can chat later. That's part of it.
Thanks so much, Trish. That was fantastic. Didn't know that about Manon Amara. That's fantastic. So I'm going to ask Sam to join us now. Oh, there's the team. There's Trish. Hiding in the background. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Fahey, and I am the Sustainability Manager at DCU. First, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a really hard act to follow, in that I'm not sure I'm very much on topic, but I'll come in and out of the topic every so often as I go through it. How I started, this is why I do sustainability. I know it's a very complicated chart to start with, but what we have at the bottom is we have time, and there's three big lines that we want to watch: the green line, the blue line, and the red line. The blue line is organised human existence, so where we are at the moment living on the planet. The red line, or the green line, is pre-organised human existence when we had the Ice Age, and where we're heading for at the moment on our business as usual is up to plus 3 degrees, where it will not be compatible with organised human existence. So my objective is to try and keep us out of there and to keep us more to the 1.5 degrees. And I guess the idea of trying to push that within a university, where I came out of a research centre for 20 years working in a plasma physics research centre that was hugely male-dominated, to a sustainability manager that really the university still only wants to focus on just energy, which is delivered by the Estates Office, which is hugely male-dominated. And coming in with a sustainability perspective, no, guys, we need to look at a bigger picture of what we're doing rather than just at the technological solutions that are going to solve it is a challenge every day. We're a big university. We've got 18,000 plus students, 2,500 staff, and we've got everything on campus from 1600s buildings all the way up to 2021, 2022 buildings. We're still building buildings on site that are bad buildings. They are better buildings than any buildings that we've had before, but they're still carbon emitting buildings rather than carbon sequestering buildings. But that is not unique to DCU. It is to do with the system that we're in, and I guess DCU does challenge to try and get the best buildings we possibly can. This keeps jumping around on me. Sustainability plan. So we have a sustainability plan for the university. It's a climate action plan. We have a council with representation from all the way across the university, all the faculties and all of the support units to it. We set a climate action plan with science-based targets. And so we got our carbon footprint, put it into a science-based target and said, what do we actually need to reduce by? Because as a university, higher education institutions, we're going to defend the integrity of the science and go, okay, yes, we're going to see what we actually need to reduce by. And so we got 4.2% per year every year. And I think now with the current legislation, that's probably even going to increase even higher. But some of the things that came out of that climate action plan is that it's really, really difficult for us to actually meet those targets. And without doing a transformational change of what we're doing within the system. We are educational institutions, so a big part of what we have to do is educate the next generation. So what is the next generation going to do about this? And it's not really the next generation's job to do anything about this. It's our job in current positions of power to do something about this, so we need to do it now. But we need them to understand what they need to, what steps they're going to have to take. And I guess another big part will be, as an educational institution, we have a huge role to play in community engagement, in how we ensure that our communities and our societies understand the scale of change that has to go on. So how do we go out and join with our communities and go, guys, there's an awful lot of change, and maybe the big cultural part in this is the change management part that needs to go on, the change culture that's going to happen. So we have sustainability now being integrated into every programme. So like the Institutes of Engineers came along and said that, you know, we need to have the sustainability competencies included in every degree programme that is going to be accredited by the Institute of Engineers. We need that across everything. I don't care whether you're a nurse or whether you're an engineer. Everybody needs to know how they actually have a place to play. We rank reasonably okay, so this is a Times Higher ranking, and I guess it's a complicated chart again. I do like complicated charts. The red line is the number of universities engaged within the actual rankings. So in 2010, there was 95 universities reporting in the UI Green metrics. Go back. I think it decided it's on a timer. So there's 95, and I talk fast and still going faster than I can get there. 95 universities. By 2021, there was nearly 1,000 universities. So this is something across the university sector that really is taking off. DCU started in 2011 reporting under this, and for the last 5 years, we've ranked in the top 20 in the world in the sustainability rankings. Now, while that sounds impressive, I'm not a big fan of rankings. We are in the privileged world. We have all of the legislation and regulation that require us to do all of the things that we should do. And so we really need to be up there at the top. If we were further down, there would be an awful lot of questions to be asked as to why we were not meeting the sustainability targets. And I would say we're still not meeting them as much as we probably should be. We also have got green campuses. We report under CDP. We're the only university in the world that currently reports under CDP, predominantly because we have a carbon footprint system that we calculate our own carbon footprint, and we wanted somebody to do some sort of quality assurance on it, that it was reasonably within the right ballpark of what we were doing, but we couldn't afford for a consultancy company to come in and do it. Well, at least sustainability within the university couldn't afford for sustainability to be vetted. So we do CDP, we report on the Times Higher, and then we also are part of the Irish Green Labs. So a new programme to try and green labs, because labs, we'll say in Ireland, in the public sector, probably consume 30 to 50% of the energy within the organisations. So there's a huge part to play. But all of these at the moment are green stickers. So they all are not mandatory by anybody. They're just something that if the organisation chooses to get engaged in it, it is something that they will go along and do. So one of the things that we went along and did, because we were working with our community, was we established a sustainable energy community. And I guess our idea was, well, we're a large university in North Dublin that has a lot of residential community that live around us. And we were getting a lot of grief from our residential community because they were going, oh yeah, you've got 18,000 students and every single one of them is in my back garden every night having a party. So can you please not do that and try and do something else? So the idea was, well, how do we actually come up with something to give back to the community? So we set up this sustainable energy community with an awful lot of help from SCAI, particularly Ruth. Thank you very much, Ruth. But what we decided is that we would pilot it based on the staff in DCU. So we started with a model of looking at the staff within DCU, where our staff were. So this is, where our staff are. And it's just amazing to look at the distance to which people travel to the university, which also contribute to transport emissions as well, just by the way. Looked at all of that, looked at where the houses went, what type of houses, when they were built. So we have everything from pre-1900s all the way up to 2020 houses. We have every different type of house. And one of the questions we asked in the survey is, what were all the different things that you wanted to know? And so one of the top questions that came back is that people just didn't know enough about what was going on. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I found across sustainability, is people still don't know what sustainability means. So people still don't know what it is that will need to be changed to actually reach a sustainability target. And so one of the things we started doing within DCU was looking at impact and where your impact is. And if you don't understand where your impact is, then it's really difficult to actually make the decisions of what you're actually going to do. So another complicated chart. But I'll only pick out two. So this is from a research paper, low impact, moderate impact, high impact. This is based on carbon emissions per year. But this is recycling, or this is low upgrading your light bulbs, or recycling. But one of the interesting ones is this one here. This is avoiding one transatlantic flight. So if, for instance, you recycle, and I get loads of people say, Sam, I'm really sustainable. Sustainability, Sam. I recycle everything, so that's absolutely fine. I'm going, okay, if you take one transatlantic flight, you cancel, maybe 10 years of recycling, and if you come back again, you might as well never have bothered recycling in the first instance. So understanding where your impacts are is really important when it comes to actually trying to influence change and make changes happen. So we do a full carbon footprint in DCU to try and understand exactly that, as to where our impacts are and what happens. So we use a GHG protocol, we do our gas, our own vehicles, we have very few vehicles, and fugitive refrigerants, our purchased electricity, and then we look at staff and student commuting, business travel, student academic travel, water waste, and purchased goods and services. And this is where the finance office gets really cross with me. Because we come up with pictures which say that, purchased goods and services, and if I include construction, is by far the largest part of where our emissions come from. And yes, I know all the emissions come from energy, but it is our scale of influence when it comes to how we can impact on these emissions, because I look at sustainability and emissions differently than our estates office, who are trying to just reduce the energy consumption on campus. But I have to look at it from a bigger picture and in an institutional sense that we're defending the integrity of the science. And the science says that we have to reduce emissions. And it's not just the emissions in energy, it's the emissions within Ireland and Ireland within the planet. So it is the Ireland Inc. versus Planet Inc. big picture. So some of the interesting bits on this is that if I add up my electricity and my natural gas, then I get to 24%. The figure came off the graph someplace. But my staff and student commuting is 26%. So I have more emissions in staff and student commuting to the university than I do have in my energy consumption on the campus. So it is, again, trying to go back to a male-dominated environment and go, no, this is what the information says. And they go, yes, but we're just going to put in another heat pump and we'll be fine. Yeah. So, and I don't have this data here, but if we, and this is some of the information that I've got from the SEI models, the gap to target tool, is that if we were to maintain our 2020 levels of activity in DCU for the next 10 years to 2030, and assuming the full greening of the grid that's out there, we still cannot meet our 2030 target. So with nobody on campus for the next 10 years, because there was nobody on campus in 2020, we still can't meet the target. So even with every retrofit that's available, we're going to have to do enormous behavioural change to actually get there. And so this is some of my summaries and opinions. So I think we need to transform everything we do. So the change has to be transform equality, diversity, and inclusion, absolutely everything that we do to actually meet the challenge. I think the targets are probably going to get much more difficult for us, and that as a higher education as a higher education institution, we cannot and should not seek a derogation away from those targets. That we should stand up and go, okay, how do we do this? And we also shouldn't say, oh well, if the government wants us to make those changes, then they're just going to have to give us more money to do that. There's just not enough money in the pot for us to be able to do that. Again, defending the integrity of the science. I think we, at least in the public sector, require a sectoral solution, and particularly within the higher education sector, require a sectoral solution, because there's no point in DCU coming up with one solution and Trinity comes up with a different solution and UCD have a third solution, and we'll confuse the entire sector. It needs to be agreed across the sector how we're going to actually address the challenge, and it's not just going to be on the retrofitting. I think there's a fundamental change of how we deliver education. So and I'm not proposing an online university. I really want my kids to have that on-campus experience. But I don't think we can, and in 2022, say you can come on campus 100% of the time, with a consciousness that, by 2030, we're going to have reduced our emission targets, our energy emissions by 51%, which could require, if these are really going to be the legally binding targets, that we actually can have nobody on campus. So we need to really start considering that bigger picture of what's going on and how we actually get there. And consistency of message and consistently on message, because I can have somebody come to my sustainability talk, so yes, and then they go to the next talk and they go, yes, but we do need that building. We have to build that next building, and we're going to have those as well. And so I think there's very hard decisions that have to be made, and investment in the business as usual model is just not going to be the thing. And then my final slide is another complicated chart. And I have 3 points to make on this. One, this was Karen Durston from one of the Climate Kick that put up this picture. And I thought it was really interesting because it's the hope picture. And there's a little town here and it says, be sure and wash your hands, all will be well, as the COVID wave crashes over. But what COVID has taught us is that we can spin the world on a penny. When we listen to the science and we actually agree with it, we can actually stop everything. In March 2020, we stopped absolutely everything. And we spun on a penny and said, right, we're not going to do that anymore because that's going to actually kill us. I'm really hoping that when we actually figure out the scale of the climate change issue, that we will again spin on that penny and actually make the necessary changes to actually do it. Second point was some of the cultural and the inclusion bits is that I end up being told a lot, and I guess I had this meeting with the sustainability, this diversity and inclusion person in DCU and the healthy campus person in DCU. And so we're all kind of unique positions within the university that are not what would be considered core business. And what we constantly get told is, oh, give a great passionate talk. And you're kind of going, Passionate, Does that mean I'm over there hugging the trees and that somehow I've lost objectivity on the actual scale of change? So that, if it's really talking about senior management and trying to actually get the change, that if I actually deliver a passionate talk, that somehow it's not valid and that it's pushed off of the edge. And it's something that I've become much more conscious of not trying to come across as passionate in what I'm doing, or else starting with, this is my day job. I listen to all the experts all the time. I read all the reports, or at least the summaries of all the reports. This is what I literally do every single day. And so if I'm not passionate about this anymore, then I've lost hope that we actually can make the change. So that's when you really need to get worried about it. And the final point I wanted to make is I was at a talk the other day with Breach Horn, who's the new Vice Chancellor for DCU. And she said one point that stuck in my head very much afterwards. She said, I don't mind being wrong. And it took me a while to think about it. And I went, oh, okay. So I'm not really particularly happy about being wrong. But the idea of being wrong is that you're open enough to actually, when you're talking with somebody, to actually listen and go, well, if they've got better ideas than I do, then I'm actually willing to actually accept that that is a better solution. So it is this kind of epitome of lifelong learning, that if you can actually realize enough to go that it's much better to open and listen to the ideas that are coming and accept them as your own, rather than going, no, I must be right and continue, which I guess is part of an awful lot of the culture and behavior that I face on a daily basis within the university. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam, and that was definitely passionate. So our last speaker we have today is Ruth Crawford. Ruth, thanks so much. I know you only have a few notes ready because we absolutely threw this on you. So if you want to come up, that'd be great. Thank you, Ruth.
Good afternoon, everybody. So literally when we say the 11th hour, I have literally had 5 minutes of preparation. I was also told some of the best speeches are done with only 5 minutes preparation. So I am hoping that I can be a shining example and not a dire warning. What amused me, just as a step back before I launch in, I thought, well, how would a man react? And being thrown in at the deep end, and a man would sit there and think, what's the message I want to get across, and how do I position myself? My instant reaction was, why am I wearing these shoes? But there we go. So there is an advantage to the fact that I've only had 5 minutes of prep because I am told that there is a very fine line between a long speech and a hostage situation. So I'm hoping we're going to err on not too long. So I've been asked to talk about my career and specifically my career in a very male-dominated environment. As you've heard, I'm Chief Executive of CIBSE. Actually, I was introduced the other day as CIBSE's new young CEO. I am 56. I haven't been anyone's new or young for a very long time. So, prior to my role here at CIBSE, I was Managing Director at the Daily Telegraph in London. And if you think engineering is a male-dominated environment, I welcome you to look at the Daily Telegraph and the breakdown there. So, as you may not be aware, I am not an engineer by birth. I'm not a scientist by birth. I actually trained as a classical musician before falling into the world of media, knowledge, and education. And I've spent the last 15 years of my career growing large-scale international organizations, focusing on knowledge, education, training, events, publishing, etc. I've launched businesses pretty much everywhere in the world, from Shanghai across to San Francisco and everywhere in between. And I've spent an awful lot of my time on a plane learning new cultures. And one of the fascinating things is, actually, as an English culture, my apologies because I know I'm standing in Ireland, I wasn't only a few hours ago, so I haven't had time to practice this correctly. An English culture is a really strong global culture, and that's a very positive thing for us. And actually, something else I've identified is an opposite of that is the world cultures tend to be much more, on the whole, much more diverse in gender. We're a bit of a rarity, and I'll come on to that in a moment. I joined CIBSE 10 months ago to help and support it in its transition as it reacts and supports the changes we're seeing in our sector. CIBSE, I'm delighted, thank you very much, to see a few of our members, very grateful. We have 21,000 individual members across 95 out of the 195 countries of the world. And we are world-class in providing guidance, knowledge, and thought leadership for the community we serve. That really is represented. The work that we did recently in infection-resilient environments was downloaded by 194 of the 195 countries of the world. And I will personally fly to North Korea and have a word and make sure that they can download it. So at CIBSE, diversity and inclusion is a massive issue, and I'm delighted we've got the CIBSE president here with us this afternoon, Kevin Kelly. And Kevin's presidency has been built on trying to drive and change the agenda in diversity. But it's not just about talking about diversity, it's about action. Hearing it, believing it, advocating it. So we don't just talk the talk, we walk the talk as well. At CIBSE, 89% of our members are men. So we've got a long, long journey to do. I believe the statistic in the world is that 51% of the world is women. So actually, Kevin, you're the minority. It's coming. I spent a lot of my time in China growing and launching businesses, and it struck me really, really early on in my time there how very diverse the workforce was at all levels of seniority. You know, we know that the ghastly statistics of, I think it's 75% of the workforce is women in Europe, but as soon as you get to senior leadership, it really, really crashes. We know that. China is an exception, and I asked very early on about why that was the case. And the answer was really simple, and it was, if China wants to be the most dominant power on the planet, why would it exclude 51% of its population? And actually, we need to be diverse and inclusive, not just because it's the right thing to do, but it also absolutely fundamentally helps the communities that we're in and the worlds that we serve. So there's this lovely terminology about when is the best time to start culture change. And I'm told that the best time to plant a tree is 5 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is now. And actually, we really, really need to be shifting the dial in that culture change. And it is our role, our responsibility to pay it forward. There's the quote, and there is a special place in hell for a woman that doesn't help another woman. I think that's possibly a little dramatic. But actually, I like the principle. And our role is paying it forward. And our role is encouraging. There's that wonderful book called Lean In, which is about helping women to lean into the conversation and encouraging them. When you're sitting around a table, make sure that you invite women to hear their voices. Women we've got more ideas than anyone else. We really know our stuff. But actually what we're good at is sitting back, analysing and thinking. That can be perceived as weakness. It isn't. And actually we as women need to help other women to lean into the conversation and invite them to hear their voices. But culture isn't just a corporate thing, it's a personal thing. So we also have to be responsible for shifting culture in our own behaviour. And for me, diversity balance isn't about revenge. I am not looking for revenge of 60,000 years of a male-dominated culture. I am looking for balance. And I was running a training course the other day, and we were talking about balance and what that meant in the workforce. And a junior manager said to me, well, the great thing about diversity in the workforce means that I can now cry at work. No, you can't. No, you can't. You really, really can't. If we're going to cry at work, sorry, gentlemen, if we're going to cry at work, then gentlemen can splay and scratch. It's really simple. We've got to be finding a middle of the road, a middle position. I had a lovely experience the other day. It was my first day as a non-exec on a company that I didn't know very well. And I'd met the chairman, but I hadn't met any of the other non-execs. And I arrived at my first board meeting, and being me, I got there early, and I wanted to make sure I got the right seat, and I was sitting in the right place. And the first non-exec arrived, and so I walked around to shake his hand, and he took his coat off and gave me his coat. Now, I've got a couple of choices. And we all know the one we want to take, don't we? But I'm going to work with this man going forward, and actually I want to make a difference. So I took his coat, and I put it on the back of a chair, and then I went and got my own coat, and I gave him my coat. And he looked at me, and I said, oh, is this the new non-exec initiation? And of course we laughed, ha, ha, ha. And we talk about it now all the time, and he gives me his coat, and I give him. And actually, he wasn't being difficult. He hadn't thought. And he wasn't thinking, here is a woman I need to put in her place. He was simply thinking, oh, there's somebody I don't know. Usually there's a lady here that's doing teas and coffees and taking the coats. It must be her. He wasn't being difficult. And I had two choices. You can either take the difficult route or help people on that journey with you. So for me, it's about balance and help. I was asked to round up by thinking about a few things that I would pass on to my younger self. If I was talking to myself when I was 20, what would I be telling myself now? And the first thing I would be saying is EQ is a powerful tool. So all of us in this room here, we have really good EQ. We can read a room like nobody else. We can hear what is said, we can hear what's not said, we can hear the undercurrent, we smell the politics. Women are really, really, really good at that. The problem with EQ is when it becomes paranoia. And we're also really good at taking EQ just one step too far and think, what does that mean? They didn't include me, what does that mean? And actually using EQ as a powerful tool, you use it as a sense check. So when the old spider sense goes off and you're starting to overreact, you use that as a powerful sense check. I'm reading the room, something isn't quite right. Have I done something wrong? Or am I just overreacting, or are they trying to play me? So use EQ as a very powerful tool. That's my first suggestion to me. The young me, which as we know I am young, thank you. The second piece is around imposter syndrome. And do you know what? I'm bored with imposter syndrome. This isn't a gender-specific thing. We all carry it. I'm bored with it. I don't know, you probably saw the Oscars and the Slapgate. We don't condone that. Mrs. Will Smith, Jada Will Smith, has made a really, really interesting point about alopecia. She says, I fought it for so long. It's a waste of time. I'm now going to embrace it. And actually, imposter syndrome is a drain on your energy. We've got so much we need to do in our lives, in our working careers, with our families. Let's not waste time with imposter syndrome. So, younger Ruth, don't bother about it. Just get on with it. The third thing I'd say, and actually Sam talked a bit about this, about passion, my personal belief is if you want to burn with passion, you have to set yourself on fire every day. And that's a really, really important thing to do, young Ruth. And I would say, actually find something that makes you burn with passion. And if you're in an environment that doesn't make you burn with passion, find something that does. The last thing I'd say to myself is, be confident. Again, Sam, you stole that. Be confident. You said about being wrong. And actually, for me, it's slightly different. It's about being confident about what you don't know and embrace that. So I personally think 75% of the time, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly where I'm going. I don't need help. That's fine. 20% of the time, I'm pretty sure. But actually, I'd like to bounce it off with people. And I'm probably will end up with the same outcome. But actually, I want to sense check and see if I can make it bigger and better by listening to others. 5%, frankly, I haven't got a hope in hell. I have no idea what I'm doing at all. And actually, as soon as you acknowledge that, and as soon as you admit it, the amount of people that will step in to help you, and if you say, I'm sorry, I've got absolutely no idea here, can I bring you in for some help? People really embrace that. So for me, the advice I'd give myself is find places where I excel, make sure that I'm involving others and talking to others, because as we all know, culture change, it's a team sport. And frankly, we are the best people to be leading that team. So thank you.
Ruth, thank you so much, and thanks for doing that. That was brilliant. So we have a little time left if anyone has any questions. Just want to say the LinkedIn page is here for anyone who hasn't joined. It's not just SEI, it's Women in Energy all across Ireland. So it's not organisation specific, it's about the person. So please do join if you're not a member. And yeah, a big thank you to our three speakers. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if we have a mic for questions. Do we? Perfect. Thanks so much. Is it John Paul? Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, feel free. If not, I might kick off. Oh, Marion, go for it. Maybe if the speakers want to come up so they can... No? No?
Hi, my name is Marion O'Brien, SEI. So thank you very much to Patricia, Ruth and Samantha. Just one question for Samantha, just one comment you made, Samantha, when you said that that you and some others were non-core. And is that really an issue for organisations, whether it's diversity and inclusion or sustainability, that really does need to be core rather than non-core? And just if any comment on that, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, so what I would see at the moment is an awful lot of our activities are green stickers. So it's not a standard, so we're not required to actually deliver on any of it. And that makes it always something that can get chopped off the end of the list when it doesn't have to be done. But I think we'll say inequality, diversity, and inclusion. All public sector, well, all universities must have an Athena Swan Bronze Award, which gets it a little bit up. But then it's kind of, as soon as you have the Bronze Award, that's that tick box done, and now we don't have to worry about it anymore. So it is understanding that an awful lot of these are the process of going through something rather than just getting that tick box at the end is a really important part. That penny has not dropped in an awful lot of C-suites at the moment, at least within the realms that I live.
Hi guys. Thanks so much to all three speakers. You're amazing. But my question, well, it's not really directed at any one person, but Ruth, your quote, if you want to burn with passion, you got to set yourself on fire every day. So my question goes to all three of you. How do you set yourself on fire? Because you clearly all ooze passion.
I suppose, actually, when Ruth was saying that, there was I always remember when I was at the graduation of my 5-year-old from her creche, very important event, real, turning point in our life. But actually, there was all these lovely little images and messages. And there was one that was up on the wall, and it said, if you want to find your purpose, follow your passion. And I thought it was just a really nice statement. And for me, my passion is very much, the offshore space and fish. As Julia said to me, if you can bring fish into a conversation, you will. So, I think it is about finding, where you really, really feel, you have a huge interest. And I think that's what it's about, and trying to make a difference, So I'm sure Ruth and Samantha have.
My son said to me, my son's 19, he's just started first year at uni, and he said, if you don't want to have to look at the price, find a job where you don't look at the clock, which I thought was quite clever. He still asked me for money afterwards, though, so I think it didn't quite work, did it? He's only 19, yeah, I know. Oh, is that the number, 30? Thank you. Gosh, we're halfway, though, aren't we? That's good news. I think the other saying there is, if you never want to have to work again, find a job you love doing. And actually, I've been really lucky in my career. There's so many people I've spoken to who've said, I've been so lucky. Someone's come and tapped me on the shoulder and said, there's a promotion coming and I'm going to go. And they've moved. I've always had people looking after me in my career. I've never had that. I've always felt I've had to find things that work for me. And a lot of it has been about finding organisations with Ruth-size holes in them, which sadly as I get older is getting a bigger hole, but that's, finding Ruth-sized holes that will want me. And actually it is finding cultures that are right for you, finding cultures and environments that support who you are. And then when you do wake up in the morning, and I get up at 4:30 every morning, I know, I'm only 27, it's gone so badly. Setting yourself on fire at 4:30 is really hard work. But, by the time I hit the train station, I'm beaming from ear to ear. I'm so excited. And I think you just have to find that passion spot.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have that spot every day. Definitely not at 4:30 in the morning. Now, I am also an early riser, but I think it is just wanting to make the difference, to make a change. I think when I moved from research to sustainability and started to see the scale of change that was needed, and talking to all of these experts that went, no, we have to change to here. And you're going, okay, but all these people don't know. And so it is trying to, and that's where I think I get my passion from. It is just trying to make that change. And I guess having 2 kids, it is how the scale of impact, if we don't make the change on them, is going to be enormous. And it's not in 100 years' time. My 13-year-old will still be alive in 2100. What I do not want is them dying alone and cold in the dark in the middle of a war. And so that's why I do it. And it still gets me up every morning to do it.
Paul, will you take my coat?
Always.
Thanks. The grey one. I think just to summarise, from you with this is such a tongue twister, Mana, the Mara. Women of the Sea. That was such a gap there that there was no one to fill it. And Sam, with you as well, leading that sustainable energy community, looking out to saying, we have to be more than these buildings, we have to bring the people in. And even Ruth, having the confidence, not just scream at the man when he gave you your coat, that is experience and comfort in yourself knowing that you are capable to do that. And I think it is that piece around culture that you do have to give the space for people, and often it is difficult that you don't realise that that gap is there, and it is having the diversity and the women in the place to fill that gap. So I think we'll leave it there. Thanks so much to everyone for coming. It was fantastic. Join the LinkedIn group. And please help yourself to more wine and canopies. And I'll be doing my presentation on Barbados later. So thank you.